Thank you very much, Gidon. We're going to move on with the agenda of the conference. And I'm very proud to introduce our first guest speaker, our dear friend, Professor Praveen Nahar, Director of the National Institute of Design, the NID at Ahmedabad, its additional campus locations in Gandhinagar and Bengaluru. Since 2002, he has been a member of the Product Design faculty at the NID and the Senate and the Policy Planning Committee. He has all various other departments. He has over 23 experience in design teaching, consulting, and research. Praveen studied production technology, received his master's in industrial design at the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, and completed his postgraduate degree course in sustainable design at TU Delft. He has been involved in numerous research and consultancy projects, including the development of the Mumbai suburban train and the Mumbai monorail for Indian Railways, which led to the foundation of the Railway Design Center at NID. His research project, Design Thinking for Prison Industries, in collaboration with UAL in Great Britain, won numerous awards, including the British Council CII India UK Excellence Award for Outstanding Collaboration in the field of higher design. In the last 2 years, Praveen has dealt with the arising problems of educating designers in the era of COVID and has dealt with a multitude of issues in this regard. We thank Praveen very much for being with us today. Praveen will be talking today about new approaches in design education, followed by the students' presentations in succession. The students presenting in the session will be Bat-El Belgazal, Sapir Rabinovitz, and Ronnie Feldman-Haidu. I'm very proud to ask our dear friend, Professor Praveen Nahar, to address us. Praveen, please.
Thanks, Kenny, for the nice introduction. I'm very happy to be part of this event virtually, of course, and very, very nostalgic to be, to be with this gathering. I remember my visit to Israel in 2003 at the Shankar College and in 2007 in Hadassah, and and of course Kenny and other colleagues have been in touch for all these years. I would like the screen share to be enabled. So today, what I'm going to talk about is, as Kenny mentioned, that design education, new approaches, and I'm going to center this around this whole framework of called lines of inquiry we have been deliberating from last year, and our recent experience with that. And if I give you, as Kenny already mentioned, that I have to give you a little bit historic context of design and design education in India. It was set up in 1961 under the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Government of India, based on the report by Charles and Eames called India Report of 1958. In last 60 years of the institute has been, we have had a remarkable journey of exploration and discovery that was informed by the spirit of India. Today, we have 20 programs offered at undergraduate and postgraduate level across 3 campuses in Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar, which is next to Ahmedabad, and also we started a couple of years back. We started the PhD program. Alongside the education programs, we also do a large body of work in design consulting, research, and design promotion. So if many of you may have been to India, so Ahmedabad is the western side of India, and if you can see, not very far from Israel. So as we all know that we are in the midst of transitioning into a new normal or normative futures. The world is in the phase of crisis, but also an inquiry. And in the new normal, the challenge remains needing to be addressed more urgently than ever before. And as also talked in the introduction by the colleagues, this includes slowing down the health and ecological crisis we are facing, defining the economy to make businesses more sustainable and value oriented, shaping future cities and better public service, negotiating binaries of global and local, and also ethically manage the impact of technology on society, and creating pathways for the resilient society. Many of us know about SDGs, and we are also trying to critically examine this and trying to see if many of this becomes as potential design briefs in near future. While talking about SDGs, I wanted to a little bit go back into the history of 42 years back, when this was apparently the first UN conference on design, which happened in Ahmedabad in 1979. And it famously known for producing 1979 Ahmedabad Declaration for Design for Development. And it was attended by more than 26 countries, including Israel. Although India didn't have a diplomatic relations with Israel, but Professor Arthur Goldreich had represented NID, and when I visited Israel last time, he very fondly remembered his presence at NID in that time. So the picture above, you can see it was a very significant landmark to build a narrative of designer as a change maker in the design and of sustainable systems. It has significant impact of the kind of work NID has been doing. So we recently revisited this in reference to United Nations SDGs framework to examine the role of design and designers in addressing emerging challenges that requires us to critically reflect on the nature of design practice for this century. So this is the moment when the voices from post-colonial nations became part of global design discourse. And NID's pedagogy with its real-life projects provided exemplars to the world through their design approach that widened the scope of design and opened the meaning and interpretation of design for development. It also brought out manifesto, which is still the work in progress, and we always want it to be a work in progress, which encourages and create collaborative networks. It calls for a need for a transformational design. It brings in it calls for strengthening design knowledge for sustainable futures, encourage design abilities within communities, define future goals in terms of social development and impact, and also recognize empathy and inclusion as core values. Since last year, just before and during the pandemic, we asked all our students and facilitators to think and deliberate on one question: how can we move from thinking of ourselves as a problem solvers to the problem framers? And we also looked at its implications on how pedagogy and how design teaching currently trains students to inquire. And thus, training problem framers requires change in traditional design pedagogy. We also looked at its relevance, implications on practice and profession. So the lines of inquiry, we attempted to bring together work emerging from different disciplines under the same theme or addressing similar issues, and breaching disciplinary boundaries and silos in an attempt to build a transdisciplinary narrative of design, which included different levels, inquires of self, inquiries of practice, subjects and systems. And the idea is to shift from discipline-centric mindset to the challenge-centric mindset and adopting to more transitional frameworks. So various questions emerged out of this can, and we kind of responded to many of those questions through projects. What is design practice? Can design improve? What lines beyond the boundaries of design? Can design be discipline? How may we leverage technology? And so on and so forth. I'll come back with some of the responses. So we have learned that we must create conditions required for transformative learning to take place at all levels of our curriculum to provide enough stimulus as to allow young designers to question their standpoints as well as status quo situations in our society. So there were different responses: self, practice, subject, and system. I'm sorry, this is not very clear in examples, but it will come later. So most projects are framed and reframed by a spirit of inquiry. The glimpses of this spirit can be seen evolving through the works of young designers. Some of the important questions emerging around design pedagogy, design research, and design practice at NID today recognizes and addresses the need for design approach based on political understanding of human society and its systems. So in this presentation, I would like to talk about 4 major questions framing our inquiries, which I will present here. So the first one is, how can we design for the future to build resilience, inclusion, social justice, challenges taken up as visions and roadmaps? How can design humanize our relationship with technology? The call for empathy, critical design, being human. How can designers use materials so as not to create society of waste? Looking into the territories of circular economy, zero waste, and more system-oriented design. And how can design with people to empower for real-world problems? Looking at social design, social impact projects, livelihoods, and participatory processes. So I will come to glimpses of some of the examples from these projects. So this project is called Noor Islam. It's a film and video communication project. It actually questioning how can the humanitarian crisis of stateless citizens in Assam be heard. This project is system-oriented design project in product design, which is talking about how can children become more active participants in policy making for cities. This project actually created a lot of ideas which can be used for the active involvement of the children in decision-making processes. This project is from animation film design, talking about how can the rich tribal narratives of one of the tribes called Munda tribe be kept alive. How can crafts evolve in future technologies and practices? Again, one of my favorite project, my student Tejaswini from product design, how can we build non-anthropocentric approach to wildlife conservation? She worked with World Wildlife Foundation to tackle the problem of train-elephant conflict and how much of this conflict can be resolved by participatory processes with different stakeholders. And this project was supported by World Wildlife Fund India. And now she is actually continuing and working extensively on this. How can we build conversations around marine life pollution within local communities? So this is again an interesting project done by exhibition student, working with communities, the coastal lines, and talking about and creating awareness about the existence of life below water, eventually initiating conversations among people about it. The project is the proof that only together we can protect the Earth's ultimate source of life, and there is a very participatory and bottoms-up approach to build this. How can design humanize our relationship with technology? So this project called Custom, which is questioning how can we create prosumerism through mass customization. How can kind machines be therapeutic for trauma victims? So it tracks the pulse rates and analyzes speech from the victims of the traumatic experiences that charity workers deal with. How is graphic design evolving in the age of post-mechanical reproduction? So working with Adobe and developing new ideas of living vectors. How can data play to data privacy? How can add play to data privacy education, which is very important that we learn, and this is targeted towards 8 to 13-year-olds. Which is the board game around this question. How do we use AR intervention, and how do we introduce AR awareness about microplastics at the point of purchase? And very important that this invisible thing which is get dumped into the ocean, and how we get the idea at the point of purchase itself. It's an investigational assistant for visually challenged that pairs the user's cane and earphones to relay information through IoT. So how can the Internet of Things help visually enabled in a spatial setting? Talking about how can designers use materials not to use, not to create the society of waste. Looking at redefining repairs, how can we help users repair their relationship with their material possessions, and bringing out all kinds of ideas to help to promote repair and help users to repair their relationship with their material possessions. How can we produce everyday products using eco-friendly materials? Questioning the idea of future of clothing, and how can we get out of this idea of greenwashing, and can we rethink the oxymoron that sustainable fashion has become, and it's still gone very unsustainable. So she worked with one of the sustainable fashion brand and really question each bit of their work. How can we facilitate ethical disclosure around material culture? How industrial ceramic waste be repurposed for circular economy? And this is a very interesting project where 80% minimizing the natural resources by 80% by using waste and very minimal virgin material to produce new ceramics. How can we disrupt mindset of convenience at all costs in the age of consumerism? So it's a very interesting film on a massive dump yard in Ahmedabad, which really provokes the idea of consumption and of the reality through different senses. Actually, the last bunch I have to share is how can we design with people to empower. So how can visually impaired identify currency notes by themselves? So it's a very simple device which helps identifying different currency notes, different sizes and counts. How can people with Parkinson's write without tremors? How can we redefine chair? So there are some fundamental truths about human body and how it functions that directly indicates that chairs, as we know them today, are probably the most harmful tools for the body. Yet they have remained unchanged for centuries. So not just chairs, but the dangerous ways in which we have built our work and life systems around sitting on them. So sitting is considered as new smoking. This project challenges the conventional definitions and standards for chair in an attempt to truly humanize its design. How can we aid menstrual hygiene for mentally disabled women? It also led to organizing open talks with girls and discussing menstruation and its issues to understand what they think about it and how much they know. How can we develop culturally localized tools for inclusive design? This interesting project by film and video communication. The project aims to help girls with disabilities through their menstruation and examining the difficulties faced by the girls and their caretakers at the individual level. And they hope to create, it hopes to create a lot of simple solutions for them. So to summarize, to practice in this changing world order, some of the new frameworks and approaches, and probably need to be adopted, in which some of the new attitudes and behaviors to evolve, where designers would have to develop a humane approach to their practice, where they have a deep respect and advocacy for others. They would have to embrace the need of collaboration and adopt to varying roles that those collaborators demand, and that would need them to practice design in a new way. So whether it is cooperation over competition and bringing new and radical collaborations, understanding the worldviews, comfort with uncertainty, ambiguity, chaos, and contradictions, and which is very important in these pandemic times, and embracing multi and transdisciplinarity in your work and practice. Also, new opportunities areas will demand new innovative practices. The changing context would need evolving practices with the understanding of systems dynamics, and these frameworks would arise out of the compelling future pathways and will change and evolve with every step. So transdisciplinary and co-designed processes will have to evolve. How do we be resourceful and build network and new alliances? And also the problem framing in the context of, in the new spatio-temporal context, in continuously framing and reframing the situations. To conclude, I would say that in the changing times, the new roles and profiles will emerge, which transitions designers as creators of things to the facilitators of change. So as researchers, as advocates, as platform makers, as customizers, storytellers, as sense makers, and so on and so forth. So thanks for your attention. I congratulate all the graduating students, and I understand they have really, done, and performed in a very interesting times. So I congratulate them for this momentous occasion, and my compliments to faculty members for their hard work, and really look forward for proceeding of the day and all the, all the work you are going to share today. Thank you.
So thank you very much to Professor Nahar for those interesting projects. You can see from coexistence between wildlife and the modern world through frugal medical design to rethinking consumption, it's clear that NID embraces the holistic concept of user-focused inclusive co-design on a scale. Hopefully, Professor Nahar will be able to be with us for the Q&A at the end of the session. And I would like to invite the students now to present their projects for the session. The students will be presenting one after the other, and they will introduce themselves. As I said before, this will be Bat El Belgazal, Sapir Rabinovitz, and Ronnie Feldman-Haidu. Students, please.
היי, בוקר טוב, שמי בת אל, ואני אציג לכם את הפרויקט שלי.
Good morning, my name is Bat El. I'm going to show you my project.
רואים את המצגת?
Do you see it?
Sorry, Bat El, I'm just going to interject. Please remember, everybody, that this is a multilingual conference, so you can click at the bottom. There's a little globe icon, and you can click on it and choose the language that you would prefer to hear this, either English or Hebrew, that you would prefer to hear the presentation. Sorry, Bat El, that's, the stage is yours.
אוקיי, תודה רבה. אז שמי בת אל.
My name is Bat El, and I did this Explore project, basically making healthy information about sexuality to youth. We'll see a short clip and then I'll discuss it.
אז בואו נדבר על סקס.
So let's talk about sex. Oh, you guys are young. At your age, you're swimming in hormones. But often I said that, poor, no, not this again. Another one, we're just talking about something. Can we talk about something really interesting? Yes, please. Excuse me, wait, there are background noises, excuse me.
השתקתי אותה בטלפון שלך.
מור מהר מדי.
ואם אני בכלל לא אוהבת בנות?
ואם אני לא רוצה סקס?
ואם יכאב לי, מה אני אמורה לעשות?
גם אתם שואלים את עצמכם שאלות כאלה? אז כדאי שתכירו את סקספלור, אפליקציה שמדברת על כל מה שמעניין באמת. מסרטונים, משחקים, מדריכים, טיפים, שאלות ותשובות, צ'אט לייעוץ ועוד מלא הפתעות. כי הגיע הזמן שנדבר תכלס.
תל במיוט.
You were muted?
סליחה.
Sorry, okay. I apologize. So my project is an application that makes healthy sexual information accessible to youth, to teenagers, and the entire principle or view is value-based, is equality-based, it's based on mutuality and respect in sexuality as well, and turns to all of the sectors and all genders. So all of this information within the application is made accessible in a way that's interesting, interactive, takes every boy and girl and whatever happens between them, and gives them sort of a platform to discover their sexuality in a way that's private, in a way that's informative. Wait, I'll get to these are my sisters. They're teenagers, they're 15 and 14 years old, and in recent years they've been asking me all sorts of questions about sex, sexuality, relationships, and I started to understand there's a real need of teenagers to get information, and I wanted to see how other teenagers get information about sexuality, generally speaking, And I saw that kids and teens really want information and answers, but are exposed to very harmful sexual content online, whether they want to or not. That content is everywhere in ads, in reality TVs, in videos and whatever. And the problem is that the moment that this information is seen again and again, and they're exposed to it repeatedly, their brain starts processing these concepts into real life then, and leads us sadly to rape, to sexual harassment, to teenagers that really don't know how to healthily enjoy a sex life later on. And this led me to examine how can you make a healthy approach to information be accessible today. Well, there are classes, there are meetings and forums, but when I went into in-depth research, I saw that the workshops are mostly for parents, how to talk to their teenage children. The sites that are for teenagers are not really accessible. They're sort of dry and boring, and they're very didactic and very sort of medical speech, and the lessons are given very late, only in grade 10, if at all. I, by the way, never got sexual education. I myself as a student in school, or maybe I got 1.5 hour lesson once. So after I saw the problems that are created now in the marketplace, I did observations, interviews, questionnaires to see what teenagers need, what they want to know, and what they need to know about it, sexuality. And I saw that the threshold of interest is very high. We're talking about teenagers. They're getting a lot of misinformation about sexuality. So they need to get information in a way that interests them, in a way they can understand, which is accessible to them. And I saw that teenagers prefer to learn about this in a way that's personal, without an audience, discreet, without anybody hearing or listening. So the needs and wants then created the foundation for my plan, a view that is egalitarian, that is fair, respectful, different, that will turn to all genders, to all teenagers, that's interactive, that is interesting and discreet and personal to each person, because everybody learns differently and they're interested in different areas of sexuality. So what's the specific point of the application is to connect this idea of sexuality to a world of values, to provide teens, information at eye level and in a way that they can understand. It can give them the tools to prepare them mentally and physically for sexual interaction. So how does it work? When you go into application, you see a questionnaire to adapt it to your age, stage of development, the way that you want to be approached. And then I go to the homepage where I can choose what subjects I want to study, what's interesting to me, and also see stories, which are real stories or based on real narratives that I can identify with, understand maybe things about myself. If, for example, I talk about relationships, I can get to an in-depth understanding either through text or video. There are games that are more interactive, making you maybe think, putting you in all sorts of scenarios. What would I do if? There are instructions or tutorials that sort of tell you how you can leave the virtual world and deal with the real world. If I want to talk with my mother about a specific subject which is sensitive, maybe this can help me. And then there are questions and answers, Q&A with other teens that allow me to identify as a reader with those questions and understand that it's not wrong to ask a certain question, that others are asking maybe certain questions as well. And I also have a chat for personal consultation in which I can meet a professional. If I didn't get an answer to a question that I had in the application, I can ask a personalized question to someone. And then after gone through that journey, so to speak, look at my personal zone, see my personal conclusions, what I've learned about myself, maybe what I'd like to aspire to have maybe in relationships, because that was the initial search topic. So also the characterizations of the app, they were also translated to design. So it was very discreet because that was a major theme. It appeals to you directly. No one else can enter the application. There's of course a password. Nobody else can see your videos unless you choose otherwise. It's all credible, it's all professional, all clean, and spoken in a professional but also very clear, understandable manner, so that they understand there are professionals that are doing this and not so bots that decided to instruct you on your human sexuality and teach you about it. And it's sort of adventurous and experiential in the sense that it's a journey that takes you further and further to investigate your own sexuality. And intimacy is something that I also reflected in the numbers, the color choice, then change from one topic to the other in levels of intimacy that get to that sort of they're more somberly reflected. And it's also inclusive and diverse because I used binaric, sort of figures, colors that are undefined, anybody that can identify with non-genderized choices. So it's not necessarily you can identify, a boy or a girl figure. And in terms of validation of the project, I took it to teens to make use of it, see what they feel, how it needed to be improved. And there was a real buzz on the application. I mean, around it, they really wanted to use it. They said that that's something that's really needed. They wouldn't have any problem using it. They'd, lots of people will use it. In terms of the professional view, they said it's a relevant app. In fact, very important to produce such a format because it's necessary, it's missing, lacking today, and teenagers do need to learn about sexuality in a way that's appropriate, that speaks to them and is informative. And so it's so important to me. The application will be launched next year with the knowing how to choose right organization, לדעת לבחור נכון in Hebrew, which wants to make information accessible to teen. I also want to help all of the professionals that have helped me throughout this project, and thank you for your attention as well, and have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you, Batel. Let's move on to Sapir. Sapir, you've got some background noise.
שלום לכולם, שמי ספיר.
Hello to everyone. My name is Sapir Rabinovich, and my project is getting out of the box, providing advanced learning skills to kids grades 4 to 6 through unique methodologies and a toolkit that I provide. The project began with an idea that I wanted to correct or remediate my own personal study experience as a pupil in school. And sadly, schools today don't always allow pupils to get the advanced tools that will prepare them for the future, to understand their strengths. And my question in the project was, what are the tools that these kids need accessible through schools in the 21st century? And within the study, I conducted interviews, observations, and questionnaires to map out the needs and desires of the pupils in port, and created a study platform that allow the students to create a learning environment, to create motivation of study for study and not only for recitation. A child that has taken in the positive results of this self-learning and hard work will never forget them. A child that has learned how to study and find a path to making their dreams come true, whether alone or together, can continue gaining new studies and new learning throughout the age. And through the observations and Zoom meetings that I held, I saw that the teachers are working really hard throughout the lessons. But the pupils oftentimes remain passive. They lose patience and attention, and they're not part of this knowledge building process. And I think that was one of the key themes, and then aims to really encourage self-learning and motivation for learning, so that children want to study, and that study only basically guides the self-learning of the child. And another key point is providing research skills to encouraging a positive learning experience and curiosity, motivation to act at any point. We want the study to maybe be translated to action, and then a hybrid study system to provide interactive skills. Now I'm going to show you a brief clip or video that shows you how the kit is used. They just need to learn differently to get out of the box. Study is a process that takes us on a journey. Inspires you, makes you act, guides you. Study is an experience, yes. Study is interactive. Good studies requires getting out of the box. So throughout the study, the research, I divided the learning period into 5 stages. And through these various stages to ask, to inquire, to delve, to experience, and to summarize. And through these 5 stages, that's the journey of learning for pupils. They ask questions, they build study plans, they use databases, they do experimentations, they build a process and gain conclusions from that process. This is one of the boxes on a heart activity from the human body kit. It's a whole range of themes within this kit, and the study happens through a physical kit in which you have the actual booklet for each student and various accessories. And in addition to that, there's the complementary element, which is the website, which has videos, explanations, all sorts of added content, and also databases that are appropriate specifically to that given field or topic, so that the pupil doesn't get lost in all of the information that there is generally online. So there's always a transition from the physical box to the website. Sometimes the website refers you to the physical kit, sometimes vice versa. And the kit can also serve as an individual or independent study unit or a complementary study unit used by the teacher. There's one example of, again, a tiny example, but I wanted to create sort of a color and creativity to accompany this study process. This is a mission or a task in which you have to find an object which is the size of a human heart, that you have to measure it, write the measurements of the heart. I wanted to just show you one tiny example of each stage, and also not to overload the pupils. And then I used icons that are relevant to the world of children, which is taken from another very in-depth analysis that I did, and also the visual aids that help and guide users. So this creates icons and symbols that means that it's not too wordy. Also in the website, I thought that the design should also show or reflect the journey that you were on. That study is a journey. It doesn't happen instantaneously. It's done incrementally, step by step. I wanted to create a whole range of content and also a hierarchy of the steps to be taken. Here in the validation of the research, I really allowed the pupils to use and all of the, some of the kits and assignments to really measure the heart, so to speak, to take their BPTC and their pulse. And I saw that the actual experience is so powerful. The interactive element of it is something that really raises awareness for the children of whatever they're learning. Now, prior, I asked them, what do they learn? What do they know about the heart before doing the exercise? They said it's the size of a fist, it's red, it's disgusting. And then after using the kit, they said that they talked about the function of the heart, the various elements of the heart, how it circulates blood to the entire body. They had a lot of fun. It was a significant experience for them. In terms of my vision, it was developing further kits about a range of topics, because this is a platform, this kit and the website is a platform that is very useful. And also maybe manuals for teachers that they can use an adapted format for them, so that they can study individually and personally for these 21st century skills. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, so very much, Sapir.
תודה רבה.
We will now hear from Ronnie Feldman-Haidu, after which we'll have a short or long session of Q&A and then a break before the next news session. So Ronnie, over to you. And please remember that you can click on the bottom on the icon for translation.
Hello to everybody. Hello to everyone. My name is Roni Haidu, and I'm going to show you in the next 7 minutes my final project, the ESCO app. I'm going to begin with a brief video. The ESCO application makes order out of the chaos, all the information you need, clips and explanations for quick information that's easy to understand, helping you build your future and accompanying you every step of the way. ESCO, with you every moment in life. So the initial problem that I encountered was the helplessness that people feel, young people feel, just after the military service or national service, young people in their early 20s, maybe after a trip abroad, or students after their degree, and dealing with bureaucracy. And that really was one of the reasons that I chose to develop the ESCO app. And the idea is it makes vital information accessible. It helps users in the important steps of their lives and teaches them how to manage themselves correctly versus the bureaucratic factors. It's designed for 18 to 35-year-olds, meaning the Y to Z generations, specifically, and people who speak various languages. And the starting point was my personal frustration that after the research, I saw that it's shared by a lot of people, in fact, this frustration that I didn't get, and many others my age didn't get any real education about, income tax and national insurance and the other bureaucratic issues that you have to deal with as an adult. And my frustration mounted when I had to actually physically deal with these authorities, and I felt very helpless because I didn't understand how things worked, for example, and this cost me monetarily later on because of my mistakes. And I want to understand what's the level of literacy of young people about these matters, bureaucratic matters, what they'd like to know about more. And you can see in the pink columns what they'd like to know more about. You can see that they'd like to know national insurance, income tax, other such authorities, banks, pensions, and of course, mortgages, which is a big issue that came up often. And through my frustration and this confusion of the young people, I chose to bring in several key things to the application, information that must be accessible, understood, clear, concise. At the moment, all of the information that is made accessible is incomprehensible. It has to be a system that allows you a quick payment system, like pay national insurance quickly, to get the forms that you need and fill them online, and some kind of inclusive forum of professionals, lawyers, bankers, and so forth that have the experience in these fields, and a place for them to meet young people, to answer questions, and perhaps provide consultation. Now, the values of using this app is, first of all, independence. Young people, ourselves, we go to our parents or older family members to get information. because the information that exists online is very cumbersome. There's a lot of overload of information. You're not exactly sure what is valid. So I don't want this cross wires, and the information has to be clear and it has to be permeable. And as for the future, future seems oftentimes very, very daunting. So getting a sense of order, maybe getting control of your future as well. In terms of design, it has to be pleasant to look on. This is a serious topic that I chose to delve into. So I want pleasant colors, clean colors, things that are non-genderized. I want to turn to all genders, and it's dynamic is the second principle. Everything is moving, everything is quick, as is the zeitgeist of our generation, generally speaking. So I wanted to draw in users. There's a little wordage. Our generation oftentimes is very visual. We get our information visually, and less words are relevant and trendy because we want it to be adapted and current. So Mital, she got her discharge 2 weeks ago. She would like to sort of get organized towards her future. She gets into ESCO. This is the homepage. It's all in front of her. She doesn't need to look too much for information. She gets into her personal zone. She has a map that she can organize what she needs to do in the future, stage by stage. So she just got her military discharge. She wants to look for work. Then she wants to maybe go abroad. She wants to look for an apartment and maybe, of course, go to school. So she enters these assignments that must be accomplished at every stage. So she just got her discharge. She has to have a discharge grant. She has to join one of the HMOs and so on and so forth. And that you can see how she's advanced task by task and how much she has left to do. Another one of the functions of ESCO are updates and notifications, push notifications. For example, paying national insurance. Hey, Tal, remember you wanted to study, you wanted to pay this bill. Then you can see that there is a push notification in our calendar. Hey, it's 3 months now, you have to pay your national insurance. She gets through the journal into her app and then directly into national insurance. But first, she wants to understand what is national insurance, what is she required to pay? And so, as I said, the information in the app is through a short 30-second video and very little text. And the moment that the information is conveyed, you can then go to the quick payment page, pay your national insurance. This is the sum is automized through the collaboration of ESCO with public authorities. And of course, you can put in part of the methods of payment. And here you can see the impact of paying your national insurance over users. Now, for example, you're covered in terms of your economic needs, and if you were harmed at work, for example. In terms of the future vision, we want to adapt this to varied populations, varied languages, and also change, maybe help impact the authorities themselves, because maybe this will show the bureaucratic authorities here that they can work in a more accessible way. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you to the students. I think we'll go forward now with a Q&A session. I think what we've seen in the morning, that the COVID pandemic has created an introspection which reflects on various new roles for design in our daily lives. I think that we can feel the difference between this year, a little bit more existential, a little bit more about how the individual deals with bigger systems. And obviously dealing with COVID and education is a huge challenge for all of us. Actually, I would like to ask Professor Nahar, and maybe later other people would like to ask questions to Professor Nahar and the students, but maybe we can start off with just Professor Nahar, if you could just elaborate just a little bit about what challenges you've had in NID teaching with COVID. I mean, you have various campuses all over India. It's a vast country. And I know that you've had to deal with a plethora of issues. And we'd really be happy if you could just tell us how you managed to deal with and how you made it count. Professor Nahar.
Yes, thanks, Kenny, for this question. I think NID is the national institute, and we don't have a regional students, but we have students coming in from all over the country, every corner of the country, up north to the down south, in the east and west, and every part of the country. So when this pandemic situation came in, of course, there was a lot of anxiety, and people were very anxious about how to tackle this and where do we go. However, we quickly adapted to the situation and took it as a design challenge to see how we can, facilitate the remote learning. So we never called it an online education, but we kind of transited into a remote facilitation framework, and we created this framework of how do we actually facilitate learning in the learner's own context and the situation wherever possible. And we encourage them to look at, of course, themselves, their own surroundings, their own families, and around to as a context and situation. Wherever possible, we try to facilitate materials and tools we dispatched to people's homes to work. We encouraged a lot of students who required making needs to do a hands-on to create their own maker space so that they can respond to low fidelity, high mid fidelity models. It was challenging for adoption, adopting into the situation where a lot of technology and demonstrations and things which are required from campuses. So we actually called most of the faculties on the campus throughout the pandemic, with, of course, safe conditions, and we kind of many student projects and challenges became a the group challenges. We tried to bring people together in small groups to respond to projects so that they don't feel lonely in their own situation, and they sort of do some kind of a skill share and resource share with each other, and they're occupied in the peer-to-peer learning. So that way we could build some bit of resilience among students. A lot of projects also got in the direct response to COVID and healthcare crisis. We have had a couple of peaks which were really terrible, and there was, so people actually came out as a volunteers, and they came into this rapid response into the medical aid design, and the startups were supporting and all that. So those kind of things a lot of people pulled off. We also worked with some of the companies for designing some of the PPE kits and all kinds of aids like masks and many things we designed and supported. Yeah, but through all this, I think we are also looking at this new framework of normative futures, and how things are going
ומסתכלים על פיצ'רים נורמטיביים.
And how things are going to unfold from now. And we would like to sort of monitor it closely. One of the things is in design, which requires a huge facilitation and hands-on access. So we are not complacent to the fact that things are okay and we are able to do it well by remote facilitation and online interaction. But we kind of started opening up windows for students to come to campus whenever situations were slightly better. We manage both academic and pandemic together on campus. We had a lot of students who were positive on campus, but still, right now also we have quite a few students who are finishing their pending work and all that. So we are running slightly later, slightly delayed semesters, and somehow I think we've been able to pull this, but we are watching it closely and see how it is going to affect our pedagogy, our practices, our learners' profiles, how people are going to move and demonstrate their capabilities to the world and remain relevant in these times.
So again, Professor Nahar, thank you for your lecture. I would like to ask another question because in our department, and as you know, in other venues in design, we have a lot of discussions relating to the role of local or vernacular design versus global design. And, obviously some of your students go and study in the UK or other countries, and they go back to India. So how would you define the role of specific design or Indian design, and how would you see this role change in the future or in the post COVID situation? Just a small question.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether the Indian design, there's a lot of debates about what is Indian and what is vernacular, or what is, what is the global idea of design. But I think what we try to expose and bring in this perspective of diverse extremes, which people get exposed to, and I think they respond to any situation when it comes. So of course, we look out for all kinds of inspirations globally, what people are doing, and we send out a lot of students on exchange programs. More than 100 students we send out of NID to experience at least one semester outside, and we also bring in a lot of international students to the campus. But then a lot of our design education and practice is quite rooted to the local context. But then also that fact that India as a country is kind of microcosm of the world. You have all diverse extremes, or all problems of the world coexist in this this part of the world. So you have no choice but to get yourself exposed to everything, whether it is a local grassroots innovation and design to any high-tech white collar extremes. So somewhere people are kind of exposed and resilient to deal with all these extremes, and you sort of navigate and position yourself based on what situation and circumstances you are in. I don't know whether it somehow responds.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. There is actually another question that I would like to present to the students, and perhaps you can relate vis-a-vis the presentations that you had this year at NID. As you know, our department was classic industrial design, inclusive industrial design, but 2 of the 3 projects were not industrial design, but rather apps or services. So a question to the students, to the graduates, how would you see your role as students or designers that studied industrial design, but now work in other fields, such as service design or app design or UX, UI? How would you define your next challenge or your view of our field as graduates?
So I think we can start with Sapir and then Patel and then Ronnie, because I know that Sapir has some very strong views on this. So please.
This is the question for the students.
Well, I think that the role of the designer is to simply intervene in its environment. I think that design can change reality in so many areas. As long as you see a problem which is significant and you find a solution, that can be resolved with design, then you can make a significant change. And it doesn't matter if it is done through a physical product or an app, as long as it provides a response, an answer to a problem. Okay, thank you.
You're managing to implement industrial, general design methodology, whether you're working in two-dimension or three-dimension design? ספיר?
כן, כמובן. אני חושבת שעיצוב קודם כל...
Yes, of course. I think that design, first of all, starts with research, in-depth user research to understand what the user's needs are, to understand their world, what are the activities that he or she carry out on a daily basis, and of course, with respect to the specific issue. And after we research and understand the entire process, the problem, and the users, only then you approach to the design stage. And this is where the research methodologies that we learned are actually used, are actually in action.
You want to dive in here?
Well, I think that the designer really needs to have this three-dimensional view to look both at the user and what exists today, and with respect to professionals to really research each and every element on the issue and to display empathy and to do it in a way that's out of love and a true desire to help, because if we don't have that emotional connection, then we won't be able to stick to our goal and really present something that we really, actually a real change. That's my perspective.
Ronnie?
אני חושבת
You've got an echo.
I think that just like Sapir said, we really have the ability to change. And sometimes people just don't understand what design is. Sometimes they think, okay, so you made it look a bit nicer. But I think that what I had learned in recent years is that with the help of design, so many changes can be achieved, and you can really improve the quality of life of people and users of certain products. And even with respect to UX, UI, I think that today, the fact that we're constantly with our cell phones, it's constantly on us, and we consume so many things, so much information. And I think that just like we saw in Batel's project and in Sapir's project, we can really convey information which is essential and very important. I think we have a lot of power in our hands, and I think it's amazing. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so just before we open the discussion to all the attendants, just another question for Professor Nahar, because again, it's another issue that we're trying to tackle in the last few years. Would you say, or would you think that our discipline is going towards focusing on subject matters rather than professions? I mean, not industrial designers, graphic designers, UX designers, but rather social designers versus industry-oriented designers, or any other kind of mixing up? Or do you think that we're facing more of the same?
No, I didn't get you clearly. You mean that whether the future is about making it the more discipline oriented or more challenge oriented? That's what the...
Yeah, sure. I think it's a good definition. I mean, should we, teach or educate graphic designers versus industrial designers versus architects, or a social designer that will know a bit of all these disciplines?
I think maybe both. I think when you look at sensibilities of design will cut across any discipline you come from or any skill sets you come from. So that remains, I think, the core of design. And I think if one appreciates that, how to use design sensibilities to be able to synthesize, to be able to visualize, to be able to imagine, present, whatever and you draw knowledge from all kinds of fields, and and of course skill sets of your discipline may be useful, which to draw certain set of ideas of how to make film or build products, but the core would be to sort of navigate through this transdisciplinary or multi-stakeholder projects and challenges, and how do you build teams and alliances to be able to deliver something which makes sense, and so I mean it will we may have specializations will continue, but the mindsets to deal with those specializations will change. So like what your students actually responded, UI UX versus physical products, and this what makes sense in the context right now to respond, what makes sense, I think that's the response, and as far as you are able to deal with it and respond to it, that's fine. But I think the future of design or design education, I feel that it may become more generic and based on certain sensibilities in future. But then the program like yours, which is generic industrial design based on inclusive design framework, and the department I come from at NID, which is product design, which is a fairly broad-based, open-ended, which actually has a potential to readopt and reinvent itself every now and then. So so it actually includes any responses as we move actually. And it brings in all kinds of sensibilities to be able to make and to be able to think and to be able to, deal with variety of things.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Nahar. So I think what we'll do now, we'll open the floor to questions from the audience. So anybody who has any question, you're welcome to floor the question right now. Maybe we should have done it like with the magician, when he has some people in the audience he's paid already in advance as volunteers. But does anybody have any questions?
Is it on a webinar mode where people are they're not in the central room, is it?
No, everybody can see. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions for Professor Nahar or for any of the students? Okay. So what we'll do now is we're going to have a coffee break until 11 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, I'm going to be passing over the moderation to my colleague, Professor Jonathan Ventura. And we will be starting session number 2, which will be with Professor Ariel Gruzenzweig from Elisava, Barcelona. And then we will have a session with the presentation of the other students. So we'll see you all at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much.